everybody. How's it going? Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. If you're here, get those likes up, y'all. Get those likes up. Tag anybody on this discussion. Share with someone that you think may find it interesting. Y'all know the drill. Also, shout out to Hakeem for the 10 on the cash starting out things right. I appreciate you, Hakeem. You are always showing support. You guys, if you like what we're about here, be sure to support your favorite content creators. You can find me on Cash App or Venmo Sade. As always, I will be sure to acknowledge all super chats. So today should be an interesting conversation. Today, I think, should be interesting. For those of you guys who are not aware, just kind of want to give you guys a little bit of a backdrop. So over the last week or so, content creator Cynthia G has specifically been doing different topics that are related to the Bible scriptures, Christianity in general. Now, I think what started this whole conversation was the fact that I guess she had different followers, different people who support her, who were taking issue with different things that she was saying as it relates to the Bible. And a lot of this started happening after the whole conversation regarding Roe versus Wade. So if you actually go on her channel, you'll see that there are a lot of different videos that she includes the Bible. She's looking at scripture. She's talking about Christianity. She's talking about her experience with Christianity. And it's largely in response to some of the different conversations and some of the different activities she was having from different Christians who follow her. So that's how we got here. Now, I had an opportunity to listen to her take and her perspective on just her experience in Christianity and why she left. And I wanted to weigh on it. One, because she asked a few questions that I thought were worth engaging with. And secondly, because her overall experience or what she shared to me speaks to a larger issue that I see a lot of people, especially a lot of women, go through on why they may leave the church or why they may leave Christianity in general, disillusioned, upset, whatever it may be. So I thought it was something that I wanted to engage in because, one, y'all know that I'm a Christ follower. I've been in the church pretty much all my life, but made an active decision, to want to be a Christ follower when I was a little bit, when I was, I think, like middle high school. So it's something that I'm very familiar with the pitfalls and the downfalls and all that. So I figured I would just get into it and give my take. Again, y'all, I'm not here to try to bash her or anything. This is not a time to bash any religion or Christianity or none of that, y'all. I'm just here to share my opinion and specifically try to address some of the things that she said as it relates to the faith, largely because that's what I'm about. Again, guys, if you're here, get those likes up. Show support to the show. And I think the best way to handle it is I want to play some of the different material that she's, said in reference to just her experience with Christianity. I'm gonna just play it and then I'm gonna respond. Because like I said, I think that's gonna be the best way for y'all to hear it straight from the source versus me trying to paraphrase it and then respond. So I'm gonna pull up what we got and then we're gonna go from there. Okay, let's do this just to give y'all some visuals so you ain't staring at me just listening, and then we're gonna get into it, y'all. Okay, so here is a I'm gonna play an audio from a live that she did a couple of days ago, and it's entitled, I think it was about 4 days ago that she did it. It's entitled Quick Facts About the Bible. So this is where she just evidently calls herself giving some facts about the Bible or whatever. And this is where she starts to ask questions to different Christians, and then we go from there. So I'm going to play it.
About that, I just wanted to come on here really quickly. Only for the amount of time that it takes me to make these ramen noodles.
Okay.
I don't know if y'all were on my post or not, but so I put a post with some Bible verses. Hey, twin, shout out to you. I haven't seen you over here in a minute. And listen. I want to say this because to me, I don't understand why we in the Black community can't have a discussion really about anything without getting triggered or emotional over it. And I do understand that people's religious beliefs, it means a lot to them. However, if you stand firmly in your beliefs, it should not matter what somebody says about your belief. You should be fine. You should be able to discuss it. Like, the only way I can see that somebody having an issue with somebody even appearing to challenge their religion is if they don't stand firmly in it. If you don't stand firmly in your religion, then yeah, I could see you having a problem with somebody, I can see you would have a problem with somebody like challenging something in your religion, but feeling like somebody is attacking Christianity simply because someone is talking about it or challenging the authenticity of it is a problem. It really is. Because, so listen, for the people who are on my post, because I'm gonna make this real clear, I am gonna go live and we are gonna do a call-in discussion. However, I'm not gonna allow people who cannot contain their emotions to call in. I'm not. Because I'm not gonna deal with emotional meltdowns online. We're all grown. And even if you disagree, you should be able to have the conversation without being emotional. If you cannot have the conversation without getting in your feelings, then you will not be a part of the discussion.
So, like I said, again, just some context. She's going to eventually get to the point. But some context, yeah, like I said, she posted something on her community tab, whatever, started engaging about Christianity. Some of her friends got offended, and that's kind of where we're at. For those of you guys who are hopping on, we're just reviewing her take on Christianity. She's kind of giving her, I guess, background, and now we'll respond to some of her feedback. So let me get right back into it.
Do the call in. It just really is what it is. But so I posted some Bible verses, and look, listen, I just did a live stream the other day. We were talking about Christianity, how you have some people who are a la carte Christians. They will take one sector of the Bible, like the New Testament, and then they'll discard the Old Testament, even though it's the entire book of the Bible. And I also said they'll deflect and deny, because their true religion in the Black community really is Black male worship. I am on live, Tasha. Hold on for a second.
Now, we already know that's BS. We all already know that Black male worship it's never been the religion of Black Americans, period. How can you be the most targeted, and how can you be the primary enemy of white supremacy and a white supremacist system and then be worshipped at the same time? That doesn't make any sense. So we already know that's a lie, especially as, you know, the same women who say that Black male worship is issue go around talking about how the Black community is a matriarch and complain about that. We already know that's BS. So I call cap. But anyways, we continue.
But the true religion in the Black community is not Christianity, it's Black male worship. It's Black male worship. But I want to go over some quick facts about the Bible based on my post, which is interesting because I asked the Christians commenting on my post to tell me the book of the Bible that God wrote, but they cannot tell me. Because here's the thing. God been silent this whole time. God ain't wrote no Bible. God haven't written a verse in the Bible. At the very least, the Bible, by definition, is a book of rumors and gossip. By definition. Now, I know people are not going to like that.
Okay, so let's just start here. To me, this is a disingenuous question. God didn't write the Bible. This is a just disingenuous question because Christians don't even go around necessarily saying, "Oh yeah, God literally came down and wrote it and then went back up." Like that's never been a thing. We know the whole thing is like, okay, yes, the Bible was inspired by God, it was inspired by divine, but obviously men and women had to be involved in the process in some way. And here's the thing about this question that I know is disingenuous. There's not any scenario that we can think of, that anybody can think about, that would satisfactorily answer her question. Let's just pretend there was a scenario where God literally came down and just dropped the entire canon, all 66 books, the entire canon, in somebody's lap. Let's just say he just did that. Let's just say God just did that. There still would have to be a human involved in getting that out to the masses. Like there would still have to be some involvement with humans. So I'm like, that question to me is incredibly disingenuous, and it's a way already to try to start the conversation off based upon a false premise. That is not like a foundational principle of Christian faith that like God literally wrote it and no humans were involved. That no one says that. You say it is inspired by divine, like there's obviously it is God inspired, but that is not a foundational principle that really any Christian of any denomination holds to. So like the fact that that's a question to me seems very disingenuous, and it's starting off at the wrong footing. Again, this is just my opinion, but that's just the first thing. Secondly, she talks about how the Bible is a book of gossip, which I don't agree with. But okay, let's just assume for a couple of seconds that that's true. Her entire channel is gossip. So why are you now invalidating a book based upon the very thing that you do? Her entire channel is literally gossip. She just did a video not too long ago about what was it, Bill Gates and his daughter or whatever. Her entire channel is gossip. So you are now saying, oh, this book can't really be valid when you literally have a channel and you make money off of gossiping. That's what I'm saying. Like to me, it doesn't make sense. Now we know. I mean, there are plenty of aspects of the Bible that have historical references, also allegorical references, all of that. But I'm like, if the premise is that the Bible is invalid because it's a big of gossip as she says it, then does that mean that her channel is invalid? Because her channel is all about gossip. So to me, I'm just like, nah, no, cap, cap. Let's continue. Again, guys, if you're on here, get those likes up. Shout out to Harrison Family Values with the 5 on the super chat. I see she over there creating her own definitions. People are going to do that. People are going to do their own definitions. And like, I'll say this. You know, as a Christ follower myself, I take my relationship with God really seriously, but I'm never one to try to force this on other people because, you know, walking with God, like, it's not necessarily an easy thing. It's not necessarily like you just, okay, I pray a prayer to go to heaven and then everything's just going to go well with you. Like, it's not. So like, you got to be serious about it. You got to be really about it, or else you can become disillusioned. And that's what I think has happened in this scenario. But we're going to continue before I really delve deeply into that. Again, guys, hit the like button if you're here. Show support to the show. You can find me on Cash App or Venmo. Also, be sure to acknowledge all super chats. Support your favorite content creators. And let me bring up this, and we'll continue. We will continue.
They're not going to like me saying that, and I'm not attacking anybody's belief system. You can be Christian if you want to. I have no problem with that. Like I said before, I was a Christian for most of my life. Hold on. Now, I don't know why my throat has to act like a struggle when I'm trying to talk, but lately my throat been acting like a struggle when I try to talk. And I don't even make no sense to me, but my throat is itching. So I'm gonna have to simply strawberry lemonade. But let me share the screen with you guys real quickly.
Okay, I think she's getting somewhere. Let's see. It's a little.
Because here's the thing. Look, let me share it. Because I want y'all to see something here. And here you see the definition of gossip. Because I want you to understand why I'm saying this. I'm very big on words and the meaning of words. And so I'm not here to attack anything that anybody got going on. If you want to be a Christian, that's fine. If you believe wholeheartedly in Christianity, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But when it gets to words, they have meanings. And so if this is casual or unconstrained conversation or reports about other people, typically involving details that are not confirmed as being true. This is all that I'm saying. By definition, and this is not about attacking, by definition, the Bible is a book of rumors. Thank God.
Again, as I said before, Cap, there are definitely passages and different aspects of the Bible that have been confirmed historically. Now, there are different battles, deeply within the theological struggle about, okay, which passage may be allegorical, which might be literal. You know, like there's different interpretations. We all know there's different schools of thoughts around Christianity. It's not necessarily just all the same. But to just say that the entire book of the Bible, that there are zero historical references and nothing has ever been confirmed as actually true, that's just not, you can't say that and be honest. That's just not true. I literally have 2-3 books right now that on the shelf that literally talk about that. These different theologians and different historians who have looked through the passage of the Bible and connected it with different historical facts. So you can't say that and be honest. So like I said, again, I call cap. It's just not true. I said her favorite word is pathology. Shout out to Draga001 with the 5 on the super chat. We're just going over some of Cynthia G's claims, like I said. So I wanted to have y'all hear it straight from the horse's mouth before I actually weighed in on some of the different things that I took away from her, just from her explanation. So shout out to you again, Draga001 for the 5. Y'all, again, if you want to support the show, hit the Cash App, Venmo, Super Chat, and let's continue. Y'all.
It looks similar to spread rumors. Spread rumors. Rumor is a synonym of gossip, meaning it's something that's unfounded. You can believe it, that's fine. But if you heard it from someone else and it's unfounded, it has not been proven to be true, then you are repeating gossip and rumors. Now, we know the Bible.
Can y'all hear me? Oh, I see no audio. Sorry about that, y'all. Oops. Okay, can you guys hear me now? I think I hit the microphone. Oh, okay, my bad. Sorry, y'all. Okay, let me. Okay, the microphone is on now. Basically, what she was just reiterating her point that the Bible is based upon gossip. I already said, call cap. There are plenty of sources out there that speak to the historical accuracy, or speak to just history in general that can be referenced in the Bible. Also, there are certain passages of the Bible that are allegorical. They're parables. It's like telling a poem. It's like telling a story. So it's not a valid point. You know, and then she also again said that, oh, the Bible wasn't written by God. It's like, no one ever said that. No one ever said that God literally in heaven wrote down everything word for word and then just gave it to humanity with no people involved. No one ever said that. So it is not a point. It's always been said the Bible has been inspired by God. There's been a different process that's happened over centuries, over thousands of years to get to the canon that we have today. But no one ever said that God just one day dropped all the canon that we have today. And granted, there are different canons, so that's a whole different discussion. But just no one said that, so it's not really a point. Like I said, to me, both of these points that she's using to try to disqualify the faith seems very disingenuous. On top of that, she's talking about how, okay, well, because the Bible is gossip, it's gossip. We just have to accept it for what it is. And in some ways that invalidates it. And I'm like, okay, if that's the point, well, again, your channel is based upon gossip. So if we use that same logic, if we can now invalidate the Bible based upon gossip, okay, fine. Therefore, your channel is also invalidated because the entirety of her channel is based upon that. So that's essentially what she was saying, you guys, when the audio was out. Let's continue, though. Let's continue.
Person say something, depending on the situation, is going to be regarded as hearsay. I'm going to need to prove that I heard that person say that. It can also be defamation and slander. if you're just going on a person's account of something. Now, none of the Bible was proven. None of it. None of it was proven as fact. That's why it's regarded as fiction. But this is something that...
Yeah, absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. Now I see over here, it's allegorical metaphors. Yeah, no, there are allegorical metaphors. And you're right. And that, honestly, you guys, like I said, that is a battle within different theological circles, and even within different biblical circles, whether you were to take the Bible literally, whether you were to take it metaphorically, whether there's a mixture of both. So like I said, even within Christendom, there are different perspectives and different ideas on how to interpret the text. Now enter, homiletics and different things like that. And then even with that said, assume as if every single aspect of the Bible has no event, no person, nothing that can be historically traced is just downright false. It's just completely false. Okay, let's continue.
A lot of religious people, and look, even though these are facts, you can still be a Christian. Who cares? Nobody's saying that you have to stop being a Christian just because I'm saying what I'm saying. You can still be a Christian. Still be a Christian. Nobody's telling you not to. But I'm saying this is what it's based on. It's based on gossip. Unless anybody in the chat box can tell me the book of the Bible that God wrote. Tell me the book of the Bible that God wrote, and then we'll say it's not gossip. But by definition, if your only account is based on what somebody said, then it's gossip. And then not only are we saying this was a book written by men who are interpreting God's word, but a lot of people are turning these men into black men. So you're listening to a book that was supposedly black men telling you their interpretation of what God done said. Look at where listening to black men has gotten us thus far.
So this point to me is incredibly interesting. Again, like I said, she starts by invalidating, saying, look, this book is basically gossip. Just accept it for what it is. Like I said, that's just not true. Because gossip assumes there's not going to be any events, any historical events that are verifiable. There are plenty of events or plenty of things in the Bible that can be verifiable as historical. Yes, now there are allegories and there are different problems or poems, all of that. But to just say that, oh yeah, no, all of this is fiction, you can't actually say that. How about go to a theological seminar or talk to somebody who deeply studies the Bible and then see if they're going to accept that. They're going to look at you probably like you're crazy, or they're going to question your intentions behind that statement. So like I said, we've already determined that's false. Then she goes on to say that, oh, God didn't write any book of the Bible. Like I said, this is a disingenuous question. No Bible-believing Christian, if you will, believes that God just one day dropped the canon from the sky and there wasn't humans involved in that. No, that's not even a point. A main principle is that, like, yeah, the Bible was inspired by God. He inspired different people literally over years, over decades, over centuries, which is why now we have a full canon. But hundreds of thousands of years ago, they didn't have the canon we have now. Some of them didn't even have the written scriptures. Some of them had, it was all spoken. So it's like, that's to just say, oh, God didn't write the Bible. That's not a point, because that point that she made was never a foundational principle necessarily to being a Bible-believing Christian. Bible-believing Christians believe that the Bible was inspired by God, but they also recognize that God worked with people in order to get the message across. Why? Because that's how actually life works. If you're a human being and you want to communicate to another human being, you actually need to communicate. Human to human. That's how communication works. So like I said, again, disingenuous point, because there's not any scenario that we could give that would confirm, like, okay, God wrote this book. Even if God did just drop a book from the sky randomly, even if he did that, a person would have to pick it up. A person would have to find this book and say, oh wow, God dropped this Bible from the sky. And that influence from that person could in essence be used to disqualify the Bible. So it's like, it is a disingenuous question. Now, where it really gets interesting is now she talks about the black male presence, right? Which we know that it's not surprising and it's not controversial that there's definitely African presence. There's definitely black men, black women throughout the Bible. This is not surprising. She uses it as a way to now try to even further invalidate the Bible And she's like, well, if Black men are involved in this, then can nothing be good about this? And I think this speaks to a larger issue. And I think another reason that she left the faith, just my opinion. But I'm going to continue to play it before I really go in. Again, y'all, if you hear, hit that like button. Okay, I see another one came through. It says, shout out to Stephen with the 5 on the super chat. I see baby mama number 5, aka Cynthia G is a joke. Oh, ooh, dang. Yeah, y'all. I don't know all the details of her personal life other than what she said, but you know, it definitely sounds like she's been through a lot, just based upon how she is. You know that she's been through a lot. So let's continue.
I'm just gonna say that. And look, Miss Hazel, everybody don't have to be ready. They don't. I'm not telling anyone to change their religion. I'm not telling anybody to change their religion. But facts are facts. It just is what it is. And I think that in the Black community, how can we say we want progression, but we can't even have a discussion because people want to get into their feelings. So if I say your religion was given to you on the plantation, are you a cry too? Because that's a fact. It was given to you on a plantation.
Okay, so this is another common misconception, that messianic worship, that the revelation of Christ, that Christianity was not on Africa, or was not Black people didn't know about it until they were enslaved. That's actually not true. Even the Bible itself speaks to this. You think of the different apostle, I think it was it Philip who met with the Ethiopian eunuch. Even when the story where the Messiah was born, and you have those 3 kings from the east come and pay homage to the Messiah. So it's like there's one verse talks about, in the beginning was a word, and the word was God, and the word was with God. And it talks about how that whole expression of Christ essentially being his presence being here since the beginning of time, the revelation of him being here since the beginning of time. So there's different scriptures that point to the fact that no, like Black people were not, their interest into Christianity was not slavery. Look at Kimpavita. You know what I mean? There were different African nations that knew about Christianity way before imperialism came. So that's just a lie. It's a false premise, and it's again something else that a lot of people use as a way to try to either negate the faith or say, "Oh, this is the white man's religion," or as a way to try to undermine it. And it's not only is it just disingenuous, it's actually wrong. It is not a fact. So no, Black people were not introduced to Christianity on the plantation. There was ample evidence of many people of African descent having an understanding of Christ, flat out some of them being Christian. Now they have their own practices, they have their own expression, yes. But their first introduction to Christianity was not on the plantation. The Bible itself speaks to this. So I want to clarify that. Shout out to Better You. Yeah, it says, the Bible has several authors, several dozens. The argument she's making comes across like she is wanting to invalidate any structure involving men. Bingo! I think you hit the nail on the head there. But you're a little ahead of me. But we're going somewhere. So again, shout out to Better You. I appreciate that, y'all. Again, hit the like button, show some support. I'll be sure to acknowledge all super chats. Support your favorite content creators. Y'all already know the drill. Find me on Cash App and Venmo. And let's continue with this one.
It was not in Africa prior to the white Persians bringing it to Ethiopia.
Again, cap. Y'all, total cap. Total cap.
Gossip cannot be true. The definition of gossip, in the context of it, says that these are statements that have not been proven.
And think about that. First of all, how does that make any sense? In one instance, think about that. That makes no sense. Like, you just contradicted yourself, because in one instance, you're saying, oh, well, this is a Black male identified religion, essentially. The Bible was written by Black men. That's what she said. And then in the next instance, she says, oh, well, Christianity wasn't introduced until Black folks, until Europeans came. So it's like, let's say that is a literal contradiction. We just heard in the last few minutes. In one instance, you're saying, oh, well, this is written by Black men, so why would you be involved in that? And then another instance, you are saying, oh, well, Black people didn't even know about Christianity until Europeans came. So which is it? Which is it? Because both can't be true at once. It can't be authored by Black men that you say have no value, and then at the same time, be introduced to Black men by white men, or come from white people when you say that it was established from Black people. Like it just the lot, like it doesn't make any sense. So that's what I'm saying. I'm listening to this stuff and I'm like, this is not, it's just, I don't know how else to say that, and it's just not making sense. And if this is why you decided to leave, or if this is what inspired you to be like, hey, this spiritual practice, this religion, whatever, is not right, then I'm like, okay, well, maybe you're believing lies, and maybe that's how you came to this conclusion. And I don't think she's the only one. I wanted to address this because she's not the only one that I think does this. There's a lot of people who I think come in or have false ideas or misunderstanding, and it leads them to be either disillusioned or disappointed or upset or whatever. And then they go and say, well, this whole thing is invalid. And it's like, no, if you're believing a lie to begin with, then of course you're going to be disappointed when it comes out to be not true, because the starting point was not the truth. So again, y'all, if you're on here, hit that like button, y'all. Show some support. Let's continue. To
be true. So if it's true, it's not gossip. I literally just showed the definition on the screen. I don't understand where the disconnect is. Gossip is based on you parroting the words that someone told you about another person that has not been proven to be true. So if it's been proven to be true, it's not gossip, it's fact. It's witness testimony, it's evidence. That is when it goes out of gossip and into evidence. So if it's true, it's not gossip. But I think what we know is true is that God didn't write one book in that Bible. And if y'all think he did, correct me. And this is what I don't understand about Christians. Just correct me. Correct me.
This is why I wanted to respond. Because she's inviting us into a conversation. So I was like, okay, let's engage. Let's engage. Because as far as I'm concerned, a lot of the facts that were laid out cannot be verified as true. Yeah, no, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, the different things that she gave that would essentially invalidate, or at the very least undermine, the validity of this spiritual practice, of this faith, of this belief, to me, are not true. and at best, they're just disingenuous questions. So I will continue. We're getting somewhere, y'all. Let's see where. Okay.
If you think that I'm wrong about Christianity, then correct me. If you think it's not based on gossip, then tell me what it's based on. What faith? Because faith is believing in stuff that literally don't exist, pretending like it does. So really, faith can be seen as delusion, but sure. Correct me. I mean, am I being the only Christian that's willing to actually do some correction? Because if y'all think that I'm lying, I'm being disrespectful, then correct me. Correct me. Which book of the Bible did God write? Now, y'all either going by white man's account of God or Black men. And then I'm going to have to question why you would believe Black men when they say anything about God. Now, I want them to correct me. If God wrote the Bible, tell me which book he wrote. He, she, whoever, they. I mean, the Bible does say there's multiple gods. It is polytheistic based. But which book in the Bible did God write? I put that on my community wall post too, and I haven't got a response from people. See, because here's the thing. God has been silent. Man has been speaking on behalf of God. That's what it is. The book of the Bible is literally men speaking on behalf of God. God ain't said nothing. And people keep talking about, oh, well, God didn't make those commandments. God made 0 commandments in the Bible. There's no commands that God made in the Bible.
Where do I even begin? Where do I even begin? God. I mean, y'all already heard it. At the end of the day, what it's sounding like to me is that one of the main issues that she has with this is that men are involved. Better you said it. That's the main issue, is that men are involved in this practice of spirituality. Men are involved in this faith. And women who are misandrist, women who don't like men, especially those who are, Black male misandrist, do not and will not submit to anything that men have involvement in. This is why you are starting to see an emphasis on female-centered feminist, tarot card reading, witchcraft, however you put it, that at the end of the day doesn't require any male involvement, doesn't require any structure, doesn't have any checks and balances, doesn't really require a community, doesn't really require any form of masculinity. You essentially can have a spiritual practice that is based upon your own terms. And many women are finding that as a appealing option. Well, they have decided that anything to do with men, especially anything to do with Black men, to them is toxic. And so they would rather reject structure, they would rather reject that entire practice and move to something that doesn't require them to deal with their own trauma, that doesn't require them to have to learn how to negotiate or work together with men, period. So what I'm hearing over and over again, just based upon the dialogue up to that point, to me, what sounds like the primary issue is that men are involved. God is even called the Father. If you don't like that, if you don't like men, if you have trauma associated with men, thinking of God the Father can be traumatizing. Now, of course, there are other aspects of God that are seen as feminine. There are plenty of passages that speaks to the more feminine nature of God, because we know God is spirit. He's neither man or female. He is above those classifications. But we see both of those. Very often God is referred to as God the Father. And if you, like I said, if you have that pain, if you have that deep father wound, if you don't like men, if you have traumatizing experiences with men, that can be a turnoff. And in a feminist culture where men are seen as disposable and where masculinity is seen as a threat, why would you want to associate yourself with any spiritual practice that uplifts and values men? You wouldn't want to do it. You would want to find any way to invalidate it. And this is what I think is going on. Shout out to Eugene Steele with the 10 on the super chat. Let's see what's going on. It says, Cynthia knows that the leaders and prophets in the Bible were men. I think what Cynthia missed is how men respected women and how men should respect their wives. Jesus saved a woman from being stoned, yes. And also, there are also instances of female leaders in the Bible. Even, we think of Deborah now. It's not as many, but they exist. Deborah, like I said, she was a judge. She had a pretty high role. Queen Esther. There's different women in the Bible, even throughout the New Testament. You see women who were helping to run house churches, and they had different roles. So this wasn't just like men were doing everything and women had absolutely no influence. They weren't working together. There wasn't a community. It's like that didn't happen. That was not what was going on. They lived and had an entire different way of doing things. But like I said, if you already have it in your mind that anything involving men is problematic, you're going to find any which way to invalidate it, even if you have to seek for disingenuous questions, which, based upon what I'm hearing, these are all disingenuous and largely false and untrue points that she's making. The Book of Judges is my favorite. Yes. Yeah, there were. Yeah, Eugene, if, what is it? Is it the book? I think it's in Judges, where basically Gideon, if I'm not mistaken, it's Gideon who goes off to war, and he does it under basically he got a message from Deborah, who at the time was the judge, and he's like, hey, go to war. God has already shown me that, you guys are going to win. And he's like, look, I'm not willing to go to war unless you come with me. And she's like, okay, I'll go with you, but honor's going to be given to a woman. Like, it's a really interesting book. But the Book of Judges, that entire book was interesting. But yes, Deborah, that character, I think I want to say she was the only female judge at the very least who was mentioned in the biblical text. But nonetheless, like I said, she's one example of a few. Shout out to, again, Better You. Said, if you want to go there, God took Enoch and told him, right. You could argue he dictated some of it, referencing the Book of Enoch by B2S. So I haven't actually read the Book of Enoch. I know that is outside of the Alexandra canon. That is a whole other conversation if you want to get into canons. Some people would consider that valid. Some people would consider that invalid. Yes, there are different biblical canons depending upon where you are from, depending upon, your culture. That does exist. So, okay. So let's continue. Y'all. We got in a rant. Okay.
There isn't one. There is some people saying that God commanded people to do stuff, but there's nowhere in the Bible where God actually commanded anybody to do it. No.
Yeah, that's not true. Yeah, that's not true at all. That's not true at all. There's quite a bit where God has stuff to say, and it's like you don't want to mess with him. I mean, there's literally scriptures where it talks about, okay, God answered in the wind, God answered in thunder. We know the whole story of the burning bush. Different passages where it's like he's literally speaking face to face to prophets. So the idea that there aren't passages that speak to God actually literally, God literally speaking with whoever that individual was at the time is not true. If you read it, you'll find that it's there. So good, job, but no. Actually, no, never mind. I won't even say that. That's just false.
Sure, and a copyright owner. Why? Why would the word of God need to have a publisher and a copyright owner? Why?
Okay, good. Again, another false point. If we really want to go there, for centuries upon centuries upon centuries, the word of God was oral. It was spoken. A lot of this, so there were like, even if you think of like the Abrahams of the time, it's just like it wasn't like they were going and being like, okay, let's open the book of Genesis or the book of Exodus. Like it didn't work like that. The culture was oral at that time. So a lot of the history, a lot of the different passages and things, they were spoken. So it's like this whole copyright thing didn't come until later on, again, until things were until essentially the written word, which is a huge aspect of Western culture, until it was translated into our space, into our culture, into American culture. But that's not how it was for the people at that time. Like I said, it was spoken and it was given in a way that they could understand based upon their cultural context. So copyrights, that wasn't going on back in the day. That's not what was going on. So like I said, I don't know that that's really a point. Because that's not how the Bible was even, or the Word of God was even disseminated for probably the majority of human history. Okay.
I just want to know why. I'm not going to ask you who King James is, but I already know. I do. I already know what the King James Bible is. And the thing is, a lot of them will get mad about that too, which is weird though. Doesn't the Bible talk about gently correcting specifically non-believers? Doesn't the Bible talk about the gentle correction of non-believers? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but does the Bible not talk about the gentle correction of non-believers? I think it does. So I'm trying to figure out where is this gentle correction from these Christians who should be telling me how the Bible is not gossip, but they're not. They're not though. Yeah, Empress I know it does, because I was a super Christian, singing in the church, going Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, like that's the thing. I was a super Christian. So I want somebody in the Bible, a Christian, to tell me that the Bible doesn't talk about gentle correction.
So, okay, so she was a super Christian. Let me say this. Like, going to church does not make you a Christian, no more than being in a garage makes you a car. Like, just because you go to church, just because you attend a few services, just because maybe you even give tithes or you give money, does not mean that you are a Christian. Think about it. The Pharisees ran the church. They ran the religious system at that time. And they were brutally condemned by the Messiah. So just because you attend a church service or have been attending church services, or even give tithes or sing or volunteer means nothing. That is not what makes you a Christian. And I think what she said to me was so key, because this is what I think. Again, I'm just giving my perspective, but this is what I think happened. We live in this have it your way Christianity, right? Where you get to pick and choose what you want, and you go to churches that basically say prayer to go to heaven, And then everything's going to be okay with you. Everything's going to be okay. God's just like some big Santa Claus in the sky that gives you whatever you want. And they start trying to manipulate God. They say, okay, maybe if I go to a Bible study, then I'm going to get a little bit more favor. If I go to 2 Bible studies, I'm going to get extra favor. Now, if I go to 3, or if I volunteer, then that means God's going to have to answer all of my prayers. So it's this have it your way Christianity, and it's very transactional. It's I do this and God owes me this. I'm a super Christian, so therefore, if I do these things for God, then he has to guarantee that I'm going to have good health. I'm going to have wealth. I'm going to have a nice car. I'm going to have a perfect husband. I'm going to have good looks. I'm going to have whatever it may be. I do these things, God owes me. And see, what happens is when you come in under that false premise, you set yourself up for failure because God doesn't owe any of us anything. Like I said, God is not some Santa Claus that you just write him a note or you give him a to-do list and then he's obligated to do it. But a lot of women come into church thinking that that's what it means to follow God. They come into church thinking that if I do all these things, if I follow this formula, then this health is wealth, prosperity, gospel is mine. And when it doesn't happen, they are disappointed and they're disillusioned and they say, God is not real. But what I'm here to say is no. It's not that God is not real. The gospel that you heard is false. When you actually look at what the Messiah said, he literally said, he was talking to people and he was saying, do not follow me until you count the cost. He said, he was like, literally, do not follow me until you count the cost. The Messiah wasn't going around trying to convert everybody. Even when he was praying to the Father, he says, I don't pray for the world. He's like, I'm not praying for the world. I'm praying for the ones that you sent me. So the Messiah himself wasn't going around trying to appeal to everyone, trying to get everybody to follow him to have big masses and big numbers. No, he was like, I only want those who are called to this lifestyle. But unfortunately, what's happened today is we have a lot of churches and we do have a lot of bad actors out there who just want to fill their pocketbooks. So they preach this false, watered down gospel to try to get as many people as possible. And all they do is have false conversions. False conversions because it's based upon a false premise. They're saying, oh, come to God and he's going to give you whatever you want. All you got to do is pay tithes and, you know what I mean, pray a little bit, go to Bible study, and life is going to be okay. But they don't talk about repentance. They don't talk about surrendering your will. They don't tell you that, hey, maybe you're going to follow God and things might get worse for a bit. Maybe you're going to follow God and you're going to have to give up some things. Maybe you're going to have to lose some friends. Maybe you're going to have to change your lifestyle. Maybe you're going to have to humble yourself. Maybe you're going to have to leave that job. No. They don't do that. There's many churches who don't do that because that's going to actually affect their pocketbook, their bottom line. Sad to say. But what I'm saying is that when we water down the gospel or we water down the message, what that does is that it sets people up and a lot of women up for a false premise. And then they get disappointed and then they get disillusioned. And that is what I think happened. Because when she said I was a super Christian, she didn't say I was a super Christian. I surrendered my will. I was a super Christian. I gave it all up for the gospel. I gave it all up to God. I put all of my desires, all the things I wanted to do, I put it on the chopping block and I said, God, show me what to do. I surrendered my will. She didn't say that. She said, I was a super Christian. I went to church. Pharisees did that. Demons go to church every week. Sometimes you will find some of the most demonically oppressed people in church. I hate to say it. And listen, like I said, I've been in church my entire life. I'm involved with different spiritual communities today. So I'm not here saying that all church is bad, but there has to be an honest acknowledgement that even today there are still the Pharisees of the world of today, if you will. I'm talking about the Pharisees that the Messiah condemned. The Pharisees that he said were like whitewashed tombs. They look good on the outside, but on the inside they are dead. That still exists today. And you still have those kinds of ministries today. And like I said, if you get caught up in that, then you will be disillusioned. And that's what I think happens a lot of times. So again, guys, if you're on here, hit that like button, y'all. Support your favorite content creators. You can find me on Cash App or Venmo Shay Sharday. Also, super chats. Y'all already know I'll be doing all those super chats. So I think I'm getting somewhere here. We're getting to the end. Okay.
So I'm gonna have to ask why y'all not doing it. Oh yeah, the same reason why y'all not making black men be providers, when it says that if a man doesn't provide, he's worse than an infidel. If you look up the definition of infidel, it's literally antichrist, but whatever. An infidel is a person who is against Christianity. So I'm trying to figure out where's the gentle correction from these Christians. That's what I want to figure out. I want to also know which book of the Bible that God wrote. God didn't write Exodus 1:16. God didn't write. God didn't write the Bible. There ain't one book that God wrote. And I'm not going to be repetitive, but it would just be nice if Christians acted like Christians are supposed to act based on the Bible. But let me guess, they're work in progress. I guess a lot of them are still work in progress, so they can't really abide by the Bible the way it says you're supposed to, because they're too busy progressing into being the Christians that they're supposed to be being. They're not going to just be how they're supposed to be being. They're a constant work in progress. You never see the work or the progress, but they go work in progress. Because I don't see no Christians correcting me. What?
I mean, like I said, at this point, essentially everything that you said up to this point, I think we've determined is false. Or at the very least, if it's not false, it is based upon a false premise. So I don't see any scenario here where Christians were told none of that. Because I'm like, every point she laid out, like I said, either was disingenuous or just flat out a lie. But like I said, I wanted to engage this topic because I think what I'm seeing, just based upon not only what she's saying, but based upon her characterization of Christians, of Christian women. I mean, she's mocking us. I don't know how else to put it, and very kind of what's the word? In a very passive aggressive way, but it's essentially this mockery. It's a mockery. And so, like I said, this is why I wanted to engage this. Okay, let me continue. Oh, I saw that question. What is a false premise? Okay, I'll answer that. I'll reiterate that.
I came in here and said I was disrespecting the Bible, though. Really, Donna Dash? I don't even want to read what Donna Dash said. I can tell you what God wrote. He wrote Luciana chapter 6, verse 12 through 24. I'm not reading your comment no more, Donna. I'm not reading your comment no more, Donna, because you're going to make me show more than I already am. Nobody gave me a verse. Exodus 1:16 is not a verse. God did not write the Bible. He inspired it. Well, you guys can call it inspiration. You can't prove that God had any influence on the Bible at all. Through Holy Spirit, he put his thought in man's mind, and the Bible have a lot of truth. Well, you would have to prove that God had any type of influence over the Bible, or you're just spouting nonsense. And again, the people in the Bible, they can say, oh, God inspired it. Like, there's a ton of people who say God inspired them to do something. Can we get some proof? Go.
Okay, so like I said, now let's just go here. So I know we have this question of, I saw somebody say, what are the false premise? I know some of you guys are coming on a little bit later on, so I'll kind of recap. She starts off by saying that God didn't write the Bible. I said this is a disingenuous question because a key tenet of Christian faith is not that God himself literally wrote the Bible, or that is to say, in heaven, wrote down word for word, and then just dropped it into somebody's lap with all 66 canons that we see in the Alexandrian canon. Like that was never a point. That is not a key foundational principle to become a Christian. A principle, however, is that I believe in the inspiration of the word of God. I believe that God inspired different people over time historically to give us messages that speak to the more divine principles. Like that is a key tenet. That is more of a foundational Christian belief. But she's asking a question trying to invalidate the Christian faith based upon the principle that Christians don't even believe. So to me, I'm just like, this is a false premise. Saying that, oh, God didn't write the Bible, that's not a point. No one ever said that God literally, word for word, in heaven, wrote it himself, didn't have any connection with human beings and just dropped it in the middle of nowhere. Like, no one said that. That's not, that no one ever even, that's not a belief. That's like not a thing. So she's using it as a way to try to invalidate the biblical text, the biblical narrative, when it's not even a valid point in like Christian theological beliefs. So that, like I said, that's a false premise. She also goes on to say that the Bible is a book of gossip. Nothing about it can be verified as historically True. Absolutely, that is false. I have a book right here, for example, that speaks to some of the different historical events that we see traced in the Bible. Absolutely, that is true. This is just one probably of many books. I mean, if you're in any different theological circles, if you really want to geek out in that, you will find plenty of people that will tell you that what she said is just downright false. Now, yes, there are passages in the Bible that are considered metaphoric. Yes, there is a discussion in Christendom over whether the Bible is to be taken literally or metaphorically or a combination of both. But just to say that every single thing referenced in the Bible is gossip and there's no historical accuracy in it is actually false. People who actually study that field and really work on that field would beg to differ. So again, that is a point that she's made that cannot be verified as true. I know some of you guys are in here late, but I just kind of wanted to bring you guys up to speed. Now there's another point that she made and it just kind of slipped my mind. I was going somewhere. Oh yeah, and that's another thing she talked about. Okay, gossip. Like I said, so let's going back to her point. Let's just assume the Bible is gossip. Let's just for a few seconds assume that the Bible is gossip. How would you classify her channel? How would you classify Cynthia G's YouTube channel? What are the different things that she talks about? What are the different celebrities, NBA players, NFL players that she references? Is not her channel based upon gossip? So the very fact that she uses gossip as a way to try to invalidate a spiritual belief, and she herself constantly engages in gossip on her channel, to me is hypocritical. It's just downright hypocritical. And so again, to me, it sounds like someone who is grasping at the straws, looking for reasons to try to invalidate a spiritual principle, because at the core, her main issue, based upon the different things that I've heard, to me, what seems like is her main issue is the fact that men are involved. Men are involved. Here's another point. So actually, no. Let me play this a little bit more, and then I'll make my larger point, because I think she kind of speaks to it first.
Can we get some proof that God inspired anybody in the Bible to say anything? Just a little bit of proof. Well, Katie, I don't think you should shame people for being in religion, because I understand it. Like I said, I was a Christian and I did feel some kind of guilt based on the conditioning. I felt guilty giving Christianity up. So I understand Black people who cling to Christianity, even though they can't answer any of these logical questions. I understand why. I understand why they attack. I understand why they say what they say. And I can predict it at this point. I understand. My thing is, what I don't understand is why Christianity never comes out of Black Christians in situations where it should be coming out. Like in situations where you should be coming on here and gently correcting me and showing me God through you, because that's what you're supposed to be doing as a Christian. You're supposed to be showing non-believers God through your behavior. That is what you're supposed to be doing. But all I'm getting is a bunch of gaslighting. That's all I'm getting is a bunch of gaslighting. Like I'm trying to see the godliness through the behavior of these Christians in my chat box, and I'm not seeing it.
Now, this is maybe one area where I will agree with her. There are far too many Christians who go around throwing around the term and act no different than the devil himself. There's literally nothing about them that is divine, or is at the very least seeking to be divine, seeking to be better. Because look, none of us are perfect. All of us are going to have our issues. But it's like there's no aspect of them that speaks to anything spiritual. You can't tell any difference between them and an atheist or an agnostic or somebody who is witchcraft or whatever. They're literally engaging in the exact same practices. They are literally just as impatient and evil and manipulative, and they call themselves Christian. So that is an area where I can say, you know what, I agree. There are far too many of us who just kind of like to use little crosses. You may get little tattoos. You may have a little, a little shirt, whatever. We may even go to a concert just to show that we're super Christian. But there's no aspect of our character that's being challenged. There is nothing inside of us that's ever convicted. Nothing. We don't ever wake up and be like, dang, I did that, I was wrong. Or maybe I should stop doing that. That's evil. Or maybe nothing. We're literally the exact same and doing the exact same things that we did after we received Christ as we did before. That is a problem. So that's an area where it's like, you know what, I can agree. There are far too many of us who don't take this thing seriously. who don't understand the importance and even the sacrifice of what it means to be a Christ follower. And so I'm like, yeah, you're right. There are a lot of hypocrites around there, and that's the problem. So that's somewhere I will agree. Okay, y'all. Again, hit the like button if you're here. Let me finish this. I think I'm gonna wrap this up pretty soon, y'all. Also, show support the show. Support your favorite content creators, y'all. It's been on the super chat and the cash app. So show some love, y'all. Let me finish here.
Exactly. Twin Man said some of the world's most of them actually, most of the world's atrocities are committed in God's name. Most of them. But still waiting for that book of the Bible. Well, no, don't tell me to ask a scholar. I should be able to ask a Christian. Cassandra said you should ask a scholar if you have these questions. The church sucks when it comes to teaching the Bible. That's why I stopped going to church and only read my Bible. Yeah, but I should be able to ask a Christian. I should be able to ask a Christian. Because really Christians should be reading their Bible. They shouldn't be leaving their soul salvation up to the interpretation of a pastor. Like, why would you put your soul salvation in someone else's interpretation of the word of God? Like, so you're not going to just read it yourself? You're going to have somebody read it for you? How do you know how you know you even following the right stuff if you're not even reading it? It's like you're not even reading it. And look, we are sinners. God, people aren't perfect. That's the point. Yeah, but if you're having faith, you're supposed to be acting like you're perfect, even though there's evidence of you not. That's the whole point. This is like.
Yeah, so no one ever said that you're supposed to be acting. But like I said, going back to her point again, where it's just like, if you say that you are a godly person and there's no aspect of you that seems divine, how can anybody ever follow you? How can anybody ever take you seriously? It's like, yeah, I get it. Like I said, I totally get it. And it's not about anybody being perfect. Nobody out here is perfect. But I'm saying, as somebody who says that they are a Christian or a Christ follower, you're supposed to be held to a different, higher standard. Or you are supposed to be held to a specific standard. Like, it doesn't matter however you slice it. And some people are in agreement with that, some people are not. That's what I said. Like, for me, I'm never one to go and try to push this on anybody and be like, oh, you have to be a Christian or you have to believe. Like, I would never do that, because I recognize that while I believe it, and I believe that it is the best way to go, it's like, it's not even worth trying to do unless you yourself have that revelation, and unless you yourself personally be like, hey, you know what? I want to follow this. Unless a person has that own revelation themselves, then it's pointless. It'll lead to literally nothing. So that's why I'm not about trying to force conversions or trying to force people to just believe. It's like, no, you have to be called, or else it's not going to lead anywhere good. But like I said, she is right that many people around here they throw that term around loosely, and they're not even really about it. And then they go around acting like anybody else who doesn't necessarily believe or doesn't ascribe to their principles. And then it gets confusing, because somebody can look at them and be like, well, how are you any different than that person over there? How are you any different than that person over there? If you're supposed to speak to a different way of thinking or being or living or thinking, I don't notice anything different. And so that's what I'm saying. I do understand where she's coming from. And I do think that is where there is a huge room for opportunity, where far too many Christians, Christ followers, whatever it may be, have lost the power that's supposed to be associated with walking with God. We're not supposed to go around here having to convince people. Our lives are supposed to speak to something different. This is why, even if you think about the term Christian, Christ followers, they didn't give themselves that term. That was terms that people who were unbelievers at that time, or people who weren't of the faith, gave to them, because they noticed something different. They looked at them and said, you know what? I may not believe in this God thing, or I may question this God thing, but something about you is different. And that's how the term Christian came about. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I do agree with her that far too many people they just kind of throw it around so loosely. And so the power of what it means to actually be about that, it's many people, they have a nasty taste in their mouth. And yes, there has been plenty of people who have used it as a way to try to get for political means. I mean, look, even if you look at imperialism, the way imperialism worked on colonialization, all of that was used in the name of God. And so you see how detrimental it can be when people take these things, take the Bible, take spiritual principles, and they use it for their own evil or political or control mechanisms, reasons. And it can completely strip the power of that message. So that's what she's saying that I agree with. Let me continue. I think we're getting somewhere. Again, y'all, if you're here, hit that like button. Shout out to Hakeem, who's always showing support. I really appreciate it.
You're always sinners. You're always working for it. You're always never perfect. Which nobody's been telling you to be perfect. We're telling you to be decent and act like how your religion is telling you that, and you're not doing it. Christians don't. It's like it just is what it is. Because you're also supposed to not be judgmental. You're not supposed to engage in idle conversations. You're not supposed to be engaging in gossip or rumors. You're not supposed to be engaging in premarital sex, i.e. fornication, but I think we know Christians do that all day every day. So why is it that whenever it's time for you to display some of those Christian principles, all we get told is, oh, we're not perfect, we try harder than it. And you should be trying harder. Especially when you have a non-Christian. Why is a non-Christian telling you how you should be a Christian? Based on what the Bible says. How am I? I'm not even a Christian, but I'm a better Christian than Christians, and I'm not even one. Because here's the thing, if somebody asks me to clarify something or correct something, I'm going to do it. If I have a problem with what somebody is saying about something, I don't have a problem correcting them. I would just say, well, this is the Bible, this is the verse this is the book. And if I couldn't find one, I would just say, well, none of the books were written by God. We're just trusting the word of men who are subjugating us and who have been deceiving us since they've been created. And why? So, because if you admit that the Bible isn't written by God, you would have to admit that you're going by untrustworthy men's opinion, which will make you a male worshiper, either black or white, which is what I said yesterday. So because you can't admit that, you would prefer to just pretend like that's the word of God when it's the word of man? And you can say God inspired it as much as you want to. There's no proof of that. There's no proof. Somebody said God can't even live up to his standards. Number one, you don't know that God is male.
So this is okay. So like I said, there's a lot there. Again, we talked about the false premise of the question that she said, God didn't write the Bible. Like I said, that is not a foundation. That is not a foundational Christian belief that God himself wrote the Bible. It is that God inspired the Bible. Now she goes on to say, well, how do you know that it was inspired by God? How do you this? How do you that? And she says that the Bible is gossip. We already talked about the fact that, yeah, there are plenty of aspects in the Bible that actually are confirmed as historically true. So that is another point to me that I don't think is actually valid. She goes on to say, well, essentially, how could you believe in something that is written by man? How could you believe in something at the very least that man is involved in? That is really from what I understand, is the core issue that she has with the biblical text. Now, again, here's why I think this is hypocritical. Because as we understand, she has lived Christianity. It is now deeply involved with, I don't know what you would call it. Some may consider it witchcraft. I just know that she's deeply involved in, what's her name? There's like a tarot card reader that she specifically beefs up. And I've actually listened, and I've had a chance to listen to some of those lives. And she'll send in like super chat after super chat after super chat after super chat, asking this tarot card reader for destiny readings. So she's out of that and is more into, okay, let's go into this tarot card, divine, feminine, goddess, that whole vibe, that whole world. The issue that I have again with that is whether or not it's male or female, humans are still involved. So even if she's going the route of like, okay, let's do the tarot cards. I don't want anything involved with men. I'm going to go over here and speak to my ancestors. Because literally, like I said, I've literally been in lives where the person who's doing the tarot cards, she is supposedly communicating with the ancestors and giving messages. Okay. There is still a human involved in that. There is still a human that was responsible for those tarot cards that you're using. If you're praying to ancestors, they're still humans. So again, the very thing that she uses to invalidate the Christian or that spiritual practice, the very thing that she uses to invalidate that, she finds herself engaging in again. You using tarot card readers or engaging with tarot card readers to get destiny readings. You having them reach out to your ancestors. There is still human involved with that. How do you know that tarot card reading? How do you know that what she's doing is divinely inspired? I could ask the same thing. How do you know that? How do you know? How do you know that the reading that she's getting or the message that she's getting, how do you know that that's divinely inspired? How do you know that's an ancestor? How do you know? So I'm saying the very same questions that she would apply to the spiritual Christian faith to try to invalidate, she finds herself engaging. And to me, here's the bigger issue. The bigger issue is that it's not that any of those things are invalid. The bigger issue is that there's men involved. Because she said multiple times, why would you believe something that men are involved in? Why would you believe something? This is about black male worship. She said the biggest religion isn't Christianity, it's black male worship. She basically told herself there. Because to date, majority of people still identify as Christians within the United States. Now that isn't a whole other conversation as to whether or not that's valid, but at the very least, Christian, I think, is one of the main religions out here. I think Christian and then Islamic, they're pretty close, if I'm not mistaken. So she basically says, oh, black male worship, that's the main religion of black people, knowing that Christianity is one of the predominant faiths that we see in the USA, right? So the issue that she has is that men are involved. And then she even goes on to say, oh, okay, well, you're saying God wrote the Bible, but men had to write it. Men had to write it. Why would you be involved with men's interpretation of what God had to say? That is her primary issue. Why? Because she goes and does the exact same thing when a woman is involved. She literally goes and she'll send super chats. She will send super chats to a woman, to a tarot card reader, and say, tell me about black men's destiny. Tell me about the destiny of this. Tell me why black men are this. So she's doing the exact same thing. She is going to a human being to get her interpretation of the ancestors. And by the way, our ancestors are not just women. There are also male ancestors. And also, by the way, if you really want to talk about going and doing this, going back to our indigenous African practices, do not think that you have great-great-great-grandmothers who are from Africa or great African ancestors who would be in agreement with feminism. Do not think that, because anybody who knows anything about an African grandmother, anybody who knows anything about African traditions, know that men and women work together in many traditional African practices. That in anything, African women saw it as a disgrace to not be under the headship of a man. So if you think that you going over here to tarot cards and speaking to your ancestors means that you are going to now remove men from the process, that is hypocritical. Because even your African ancestors saw the importance of men. So the whole thing is BS. It is all BS. She literally judges Christianity based upon the very same things that she does. And to me, this shows me at the end of the day, the issue is not the spiritual practice. Christianity, following Christ, works if you work it. The issue here is that men are involved. The issue here is that to actually be about this faith would require submission, would require that you have to surrender your will to a God greater to yourself. It would also require that you would likely have to come under submission of some spiritual authority. This is what is required in order to be of the Christian tradition. Women who do not like men or who are misandrous, who do not like authority, don't want that. So they have to find a way to invalidate it, even if they find themselves being hypocritical and engaging in these same practices, just in a different form. And that, to me, is what we see happening over here. She's not engaged with men per se. She's engaging with women, but she's still asking women for divine inspiration. Still asking them for divine inspiration. Praying to her ancestors, praying to ancestors, trying to get wisdom from ancestors, conveniently overlooking the fact that we also have male ancestors. Sorry, ladies. And what's also convenient is that while I know she herself has said multiple times that she doesn't necessarily ascribe to the Christian faith, nor does she believe in the Bible, she also promotes, what's that word? I can't think of the word. I think it's Genesis or something. It's that, especially that word where women can reproduce themselves without men. Essentially virgin birth, right? Mary, we know the whole story of Mary, one who birthed the man of what the word made flesh, right? So she doesn't believe in the Bible, but promotes that. Doesn't believe in the Bible, but promotes that. And then, like, again, it just goes back to the main issue with this. It's not all the other questions that she raised. To me, that's just her grasping for straws, because it really, if you really go to the core to them, many of them are invalid. The main issue is that men are involved. And if you are a person that does not like men, does not like the idea of authority, does not like the idea of submission, does not like the fact that when you actually do look at the biblical text, it is very clear that there are different roles. Within the context of marriage specifically, men are the head. Here's another thing too that I think is just so ridiculous. You got a lot of women over here butthurt that men are their head. You even have Christian feminists that say, oh, I don't believe in submission. I don't believe men should lead. I don't believe men should be the head. I mean, I understand this in the Bible, but we're in a patriarchal system, and we're in a system where men rule and men control, yada, 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 X, Y, Z, A, B, and C. Now, we already know within the Black community, patriarchy is null and void. That doesn't really exist. That is not a thing in Black American culture. It is not a thing because Black men are the targets of white male patriarchy. So Black male patriarchy is a myth. We already know this. Secondly, what is oftentimes conveniently overlooked is that any person who is called to be a leader in the gospel has the heavier burden. They have the higher call. Christ himself said, whoever among you wants to be the greatest must also be the least. He says, the greatest among you will be the servant. Even if you see the way that he led, he sacrificed himself. It gives men the calling and the responsibility to lay down their life the way Christ laid down his life for the church. So men who are the head and are the leaders have the higher call, have the higher level of responsibility. So what so often I hear removed from this conversation is that while many women I feel are fighting for that position or fighting for that equality, even within marriage or within the context of relationship, they conveniently overlook the responsibility and the burden associated with that. Do you want, as a woman, to have the responsibility to lay your life down for your husband as Christ to the church? Do you want that call? Do you want that responsibility? Or would you much rather respect your husband? Those are the instructions to women. Women, respect, honor your husband. Honor him as you would the Lord. Who has the higher call? The person who's supposed to sacrifice himself as Christ to the church? Or the person who's supposed to honor and respect that who sacrificed? Who has the higher call? Who has the heavier responsibility? Even if you look in the story of Genesis, when Eve sinned, who did God go to? God didn't go directly to Eve. He didn't go directly to Eve. He went to Adam. He said, Adam, what's going on in your house? Adam was judged. He was judged according to what happened with his wife. Why? Because he was the head. He was a protector. He was supposed to be the one helping to navigate and guide and protect his wife. I've heard some pastors say Adam at that time wasn't on his job. He was a little bit passive. He didn't get involved. Why was he allowing Eve to talk to the serpent? Like, I've heard all kinds of different interpretations of that. But nevertheless, when Eve sinned, because she was under the headship of Adam, God went directly to the head. So again, there is a heavier call and a heavier responsibility. And so while we're fighting to try to be equal or fighting to try to be the heads, we forget that there's also a higher level of responsibility and also a higher level of service associated with that. Ladies, are you ready? That's what I see. Parthenogenesis. That's what they mean. Parthenogenesis. I just saw it. Ladies, are you ready? I would argue that many of us are not. So I would say that, especially if you call yourself a Christian or Christ follower, don't get caught up in that whole BS of I'm a Christian, but this is still patriarchal and patriarchy, and I need to be equal. We need to be co-equals. You don't want that because you can't handle the responsibility. You can't. You just simply can't. You weren't made to. And as soon as you try to insert yourself into that wrongful position, it causes havoc and chaos. It just is what it is, y'all. So, I mean, y'all, that was, if you want to go listen to the rest of that, you can. There's a couple of minutes more on that particular live. She also has, I think, like maybe 2 or 3 more lives where she just kind of goes in her thoughts in the Bible. From what I've seen so far, like I said, I just call cap. I call cap. At the end of the day, what I believe is that the primary reason she doesn't like Christianity is, I think what happened is that she came in on a false premise. She maybe was preached the have it your way Christianity, which many of us are told. The whole, if you do A, B, C, X, Y, and Z, God's gonna take care of you. God's gonna health as well. You're gonna have the perfect husband that loves you. You're gonna have the perfect life. You're gonna have the amazing job. You're not ever gonna get sick. You're not ever gonna be disappointed. God has your back, right? So you're basically told that if I do these things, then God is going to do all these things. And there's no conversation about transformation. There's no conversation about surrendering your will. There's no conversation about sacrifice. There's no conversation about coming under submission or authority. None of that is really involved. The main thing is that it's very transactional. If I do these couple of things, then God has to do these couple of things. And like I said, I think many women come in based upon that false understanding, not recognizing that Christ himself says, if you want to follow me, you have to give up your life. You have to give up your life to follow me. And so because that's not clear from the beginning, then there's a lot of misunderstanding. And sometimes there's false expectations made. And when those expectations don't come through, you have certain people who are disillusioned. And I would not be surprised if this is what happened to her. Now, I don't know. Like I said, this is just speculation. But based upon the different things that I'm hearing, I tend to think that's what happened. Because that happens to a lot. It just happens to a lot of women. Many women that I know are disillusioned because they came into this like they were sold a lie. And so that's why I'm just like, I wanted to talk about this because I understand how that could be incredibly, incredibly disappointing. And quite frankly, you can come into disillusionment. But this is why when you actually read the Gospels, you actually read the Bible, and you look at the way that the Messiah handled this, he wasn't going around trying to recruit as many people as possible. He was only trying to recruit those who were really called by the Spirit. And there's a reason for that, because he said, broad is the way that leads to destruction. Broad is the way that leads to destruction. Narrow is the road that leads to life, and few find it. So he basically was saying, hey, only a few of you guys are going to want to rock with me. And I'm okay with that. And I think instead of us going around trying to preach this whole have it your way, let me try to get as many people as I want in this faith of religion, instead of doing that, we should go back to the way Jesus did it, the way the Messiah did it. And he said, listen, most of y'all aren't going to want to follow me. Most of y'all are going to look at this and be like, this is dumb. I don't understand. That's too much sacrifice. Most of y'all aren't going to want to rock with me. But if you do feel so called, if you do feel so inclined, follow me. And I think if more of us came in under that premise, then we wouldn't be having all this disillusionment. We wouldn't be having all this Christian feminism and all this confusion about what's right or wrong and all this, oh, I'm Christian, but you're acting the exact same way as anybody who is non-Christian, or you're doing the exact same thing. We wouldn't have that. It would be very clear. That's how it was, like I said, at the beginning. Christ followers at that time, they didn't go around calling themselves Christians. That term was given to them when people started to see that the way that they acted was different. And they looked at them and then said, I don't know if I believe in God. I don't know if I rock with this whole idea of God, but something about you is different. You must be a Christian. That's how it started. And like I said, I think if we went back to that, got away from trying to make this a popular thing, got away from trying to make this a thing that everybody's supposed to believe, and allowed God or allowed the Spirit to speak to people and just said it for how it was, that would eliminate, I think, a lot of this different confusion. My thoughts, y'all. Shout out to is that KW Don? I hope I didn't butcher that. I see Cynthia G's channel is a Black misandrist channel with celebrity gossip and trending topics mixed in. Yeah, no, she don't like Black men. That I don't think anybody can deny that. She is not a fan of Black men. That is for sure. So, like I said, that's really what I got. At the end of the day, I think, when there's a mischaracterization of the gospel, when we see the gospel as a have it your way kind of religion, it sets women up for failure. Women who come into this have to know that the first step is surrendering your life and surrendering your will. And what that actually may mean is that there are aspects of your life, there are things that you are doing or engaging in, there are maybe dreams that you have, there are maybe thoughts that you have to be willing to give up. That's step one. That is step one. That's step one. That's what I'm saying. It's like you got to go back to surrender your will to God. And yes, I'm not saying like, in some ways that is an ongoing process. You surrender and then there is an ongoing surrender, but you can't get around from that. And like I said, the gospel, it works if you work it. I'm a firm believer. It works if you work it, but it's not for everybody. And that's why, like I said, I'm not one to try to force it on people. I would just hope over time, as I get to know people personally, as I have the opportunity to walk with them in my life, that they would be inspired. They would be inspired to know the God that I'm getting to know. That's my hope. But I'm never one to be like, you got to do this, you got to do that, because I'm like, it doesn't work like that. You can't force it on people. Like I said, many women are sold a false gospel and they're disillusioned. They're sold a have it your way gospel that doesn't require anything of them, maybe other than maybe a few tithes or a few Bible studies. They're sold a have it your way gospel and they're disillusioned. That always ends up in failure. Like I said, going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than being in a garage makes you a car. Like, just because you are in church does not mean that you are a born again or saved or spirit filled or however. It means nothing. It just means that you're a person in a church building. That's it. You're a person in a structure, but that does not mean that your heart has been transformed. It does not mean that you have surrendered your will. So we got to remove the, oh, I go to church, I'm a Christian. That's not true. Like I said, the Messiah himself looked at the people who were running the church. He looked at Pharisees. They were the spiritual leaders and said, you guys are whitewashed tombs. All of you guys are sons of Satan, literally. Like, his words were very condemning. These was to the spiritual leaders. So if he's saying that to the people who are running the church, then we have to know that that's not enough. And like I said, I understand many people have been disillusioned because there have been bad actors out there who have used religion, who have used the Bible to try it for political means, to try to gain control. Even if you look at imperialism, that's what happened. They said, oh, we come in the name of God, and ended up like wiping out and genociding entire people. So of course you could look at that and say, I don't want anything to do with something that's associated with bloodshed. But like I said, that's not the full gospel. Because no way does it say, oh, love your enemies and pray for those who despitefully use you. And then the same instance you go and say, oh, I'm a Christian, I'm going to kill everybody who's enemy. It's like, no, God, that's not what the Messiah was saying. But like I said, a lot of people look at the way that Christianity has been used to enslave people, to brutalize people, to genocide people, and they say, I want nothing to do with that. But like I said, that is not the true message. That's not what it's about. And then, like I said, bad experiences don't invalidate a spiritual practice. Sometimes people go to churches or they're involved with people who say that they're Christian or spiritual. They have bad experiences, and then they go and they say, dang, like, well, if that's what God is about, I don't want anything to do with that. That happens a lot. I mean, I know people who just, they've been like, I don't believe in God whatsoever because I met somebody who said that they believed in God and they were evil. And that happens too. But that's what I'm saying. Just because you have a bad experience doesn't necessarily invalidate the importance of it. It's like going to the hospital one day and God forbid you have a traumatizing experience at the hospital. Does that mean that hospitals are all bad? Does that mean that hospitals aren't important? No. Yeah, no, maybe you had a traumatizing experience there. Maybe something needs to be addressed in the way that hospital is running at things. But that doesn't now invalidate the entire existence of hospitals in the medical system, system. So that's what I'm saying. Like, just because we have bad experiences with certain things doesn't mean that it's now invalid. It just means, you know what? Anytime there's humans involved, you're going to run into some stuff. That's why you shouldn't put your faith in just man or just say, oh, well, because, this pastor says this, then I'm only going to believe this pastor does everything right. You know what I mean? Like, no, you're going to find plenty of pastors who are doing crazy things. That doesn't mean God isn't real, And then, like I said, at the end of the day, women who are rebellious and misandrous and who just don't want anything to do with men, they're going to find any reason or any way to invalidate this or any other spiritual practice. It just is what it is. That's what I think happened in this instance. She's already decided she wants nothing to do with men. She definitely wants nothing to do that includes Black men. And that's why she's turned to a spiritual practice that, in essence, removes the influence of men. Because she gets to do whatever she wants to do without having to feel any conviction, without having to feel any shame, and being able to make up her own rules. A lot of women like that, And like I said, again, leaving Christianity gives these kinds of women a reason to remove men from the entire picture. Something that some will find very, very intriguing. So, like I said, that's what I got. That is what I have on this topic. Like I said, if you want to see the remainder of her breakdown I'll leave the link to it in the description so you can watch it. She also has additional videos where she kind of gives her perspective on Christianity or the Bible. You can watch it if you want to, if you were not. But that's my perspective. Again, I wanted to engage her on this topic because, you know, she invited us to. She's like, well, somebody correct me or somebody answer me or somebody. So I figured, okay, let me kind of give it a shot. And more importantly, I wanted to address some key things that I've seen happen to women over the years that leave them being disillusioned, that leave them being confused, that leave them being mad, upset, whatever. And so that's why I wanted to talk about it. So anyways, guys, I do appreciate you for hanging out here, for being here. It's all been fun. This has all been good. I want to make sure I got all the stuff. Yeah, so anyways, guys, definitely be sure to hit the like button if you haven't already. Again, if you'd like to show support to the show, you can find me on Cash or Venmo, Sharday. Stay tuned for other upcoming content and ideas and topics. Support your favorite content creators. Thank you for tuning in today. And yeah, we'll talk later, guys. Bye.